You know the recording is in progress. And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Hello, and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 856. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camera. You know I've asked you here. You know.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what you got to do. It's exactly what you got to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to talk about Formula One news. And there's a lot of Formula One news out there. But before talking about Formula One news, I generally introduce my co-host. It's been a minute since she's been on. You know her, the lovely, the redoubtable Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. There's lots to talk about because as it happens, it really is about two of your all-time favorite motorsport groups, McLaren, which everyone knows, and then Michael Andretti himself. And so we're going to be talking about the whole Andretti being approved, sort of. And then we're going to talk about the F1 stalled growth. There was an interesting report that came out talking about their social media engagement, fan engagement, and how it's waning in this year, and what the report suggested might be the cause. We'll discuss that. You know, Grace, I think I'm going to flip the stories because if we talk about F1 stalled growth first before we get into the Andretti. I know the Andretti thing is the biggest news from the day, and yes, we are going to talk about it, but I want to talk about the stalled growth because it kind of gets into a point I'm going to make about the Andretti thing. So I'm doing this on the fly, folks.
I'm
totally
ready.
Changing this. See how Grace like I read in the wind.
Like I read the notes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're like Paul. You don't read the notes.
That's right. It makes it more fun that way.
It does. And then we're going to be talking about a little bit of Aston Martin's current dilemma. You know what I'm talking about. I'll get into the numbers later on. You'll be able to track with me. And then finally, the all-time favorite, Albin's Cat section, where we talk about all things social media and fun and random about motorsport. Grace will have some of that. She's already previewed a little bit of that with me. It's good. And then we get into my no shit headlines, of course, and then we'll bow out. However, I do have to say thank you so much to our Patreon supporters because we could not and we would not do this podcast if it was not for our Patreon supporters. So if you've ever thought about being a Patreon supporter, you can do that as little as $1 a month. You can go to our website, theparcfermé.com. On the right-hand side, it says support us. Click on that. You can do PayPal, Patreon, whatever you want to do over there, but we'd appreciate it. And if you don't want to support the podcast, that's fine too. However, find a Patreon supporter and pat them on the back because that is why we do what we do. Okay.
No, wait. What are you trying to do to me? Usually that's your outro. Now
I know
it's
my outro.
Intro. What are you doing to me, man? I have no idea where we are.
It's almost like I'm going.
That's it, man.
Like it's over, you know?
Show's over. 2 minutes.
Show's over.
All you people that complain that we've never stuck to 30 minutes, there you go.
There you go.
Average is out. We're over.
A 2-minute podcast doesn't get any better than that.
That's right.
It's awesome.
Right.
So, all right, let's jump in. I'm going to flip the notes here. We're going to start off with F1's stalled growth. And I thought this was an interesting point. There was a report, a social media study done by a social intelligence company of social media patterns, et cetera. And I first saw the article. I had to.
There was so many buzzwords in that statement that you just said.
Wasn't it?
If only they were like thought leaders and dream architects and
I know. It's always been one of my pet peeves. Like whenever there's a new technology, you instantly look at Twitter and LinkedIn, and people's bios already have them as experts. So right in the nascent era of social media, when I didn't even know what social media was, you had all these people out there. I'm a social media expert. Now it's AI experts, right?
Whatever.
You can't shake a stick without hitting somebody that is a seasoned, grizzled, 40-year veteran of the AI industry.
That's right.
You know, it's amazing. So yes, a lot of buzzwords in there. It is Buzz Radar is the name of the
Even
group that
better.
did it. It's even better. We're Buzz Radar with buzzwords.
That's right.
So anyway, now I got to say, I didn't see this. I found it eventually on LinkedIn. I found their page with the report, and I posted a copy of the report. You can download it on the story on our website. But in all fairness, hat tip to Jonathan Noble. He wrote a piece over at O2 Sport about it, and I saw it, and I thought, oh no, that would be an interesting report. I'd like to see the whole report, and so I went over and dug into it and read it. So the report was released, and it suggests that the 2023 season now. Hold on to your hats, folks. It suggests that the 2023 season reveals a dramatic decline in F1's impressive growth in recent years. The report titled, Have We Reached Peak F1? That's the name of the report.
Okay.
Suggests that the boom of 2022, boosted by the dramatic 2021 title fight and new car rules, may well mark a high point of interest in Formula One. And it's been sliding ever since. So they were using human analysis of this data.
Wait a minute. Human analysis and AI data. Human analysis.
Human
That's just
analysis.
called analysis.
Yeah.
Human analysis.
It's human. Well, see, this is how high tech we are.
Come on, people. Those human analysis thought leaders, bring it down a notch. It's called analysis and AI data.
Yeah, it
human
is.
Analysis.
So when you do all your surveyology and crafting, do you say it's human analysis and AI?
I am now. My survey craft definitely involves human analysis from now on.
All your survey craft is going to be human analysis and AI. So anyway, it said using human analysis and AI data to look at F1 on social media over the past decade, they analyzed 70 million fan posts and found that the championship had suffered its first decline in interest in a while. Its data, 2 years. That is awesome. Whatever you just did on the video was awesome.
I have no idea. I don't know.
That is so awesome.
It's not even my birthday. Maybe somebody wished me congratulations.
So if you're just listening to the podcast, we put these on YouTube. You have to go watch this time.
I wish I had control over that.
You held up the number 2.
But what did that have to do with?
And I don't know.
I have no idea. That's great. I probably sent some thought leader a message somewhere. But anyway, it's like
you opened Stargate.
When you send somebody a congratulations, right? You get those little balloons and an Apple
great.
Message. That's totally what that looked. I don't know. Anyway, I have no idea what I just did. But anyway, my point being, it says in a while.
Yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
I don't think that counts as. In my human analysis, usually you try to look at like 5 years for a trend. 2 years.
Right. Should we panic yet?
No.
Calm
down. It's all right.
Its data suggests that social media mentions of F1 were down 70.2% in the first 5 months of this year compared to the same period in 2022, with new followers down 46.29% and social reach down 64.10%.
Okay.
So Grace, as a woman who works in, these kind of metrics.
Human analysis,
Human analysis and AI. I mean, we are talking about the delta between 1 year, 12 months.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't, on top of the fact that you would want to look at this compared not only to itself, but compared to other sports, right? Which I know you get into, but I don't know that I don't know. I'm not ready to that's it. I'm out. If I'm a sponsor, I'm not that's it. I'm taking my money somewhere else. It's okay. It's okay.
Here's what the report actually said, and I'm going to quote it here. Quote, the data comparison between 2022 and 2023 revealed significant drops in overall mentions of F1, along with dismal numbers in growth of new followers of high-profile accounts. The reach of F1-related content across various social platforms has also receded, in stark contrast to the steady progress observed yearly before. But the declining numbers are only one part of the story. The social data from 2023 also offered insight into a fundamental shift in conversation about F1, a noticeable upswing in the use of negative adjectives associated with the sport. Words like boring and annoying are now becoming high-frequency descriptors, replacing erstwhile positive words like interesting and exciting.
Okay, first word, they use the word erstwhile. That's pretty
erstwhile. Great. Yeah, they shoehorned that in. That was a good use.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was like somebody, I used to have a professor that like his little professor friends would get together and they'd be like, in this conference presentation, you have to use this word. And so you had to like work it in somewhere. So it was always kind of fun to see how he would work it in. So erstwhile is definitely a word like that. But anyway, I feel like as somebody who's been watching Formula One for 23 years now, this doesn't seem to me like a trail off. This seems to me like people are actually watching the sport. And I say that because Formula One can be boring, just like football can be boring and hockey can be boring, right? Like, I just don't think I think that when you're putting it up against Drive to Survive, it's going to be boring because sports, especially if it's a sport and not just entertainment, is going to be boring sometimes.
It
you
is.
need that, and it's okay. So I guess I just don't see things like boring and annoying as like, oh, I feel like you're now watching the sport finally. You're paying attention. You realize that rule making from one race to another isn't consistent. Welcome to the sport.
Yeah.
You didn't get that from Drive to Survive? I'm sorry, but now you know. And now you're a fan. Welcome. Rulemaking and the way that it is distributed across race is not the same. Welcome.
I'm sorry Drive to Survive didn't adequately portray Formula One and all its nuance, but I'm glad you're watching.
I'm sorry that it didn't tell you about how the fact that in some races, all we talk about is track limits. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that was not highlighted in Drive to Survive. Welcome to Formula One.
I'd also like to apologize that 80% of the season is occupied with conversation about tire compounds.
Because, tires. It's
tires.
Car racing.
It's what sells the sport.
I would love to know what else I'm bored by talk of aerodynamics. Welcome to the sport. What do you think we were going to talk about? I don't care about the difference between push rods and pull rods. It's annoying. No way. Right. Welcome to Formula One.
I thought we were going to talk about Taylor Swift being in the celebrity box.
I'm fine. Speaking of football, right? Like there's some part of me that sometimes I just want to watch some touchdowns, right? And I'm clearly not the only one. I watch Red Zone because I hate listening to the announcers. They're all annoying. And there's a whole montage of all the touchdowns. So clearly I'm not the only person that sometimes you just want to eat a piece of cheesecake and watch some touchdowns. But sometimes you want like a nice port and you want to watch a game and really experience it. Both of these are fine, right? Like it's okay. You don't have to be into all this detail, but welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to my sport. This is what we talk about.
It is what we talk about. The report suggests that this decline, Grace, is down to single team dominance and believes there is a clear correlation between close F1 title fights and increased fan engagement as F1 experienced the last drop off in engagement in 2018 when Lewis stormed to the title.
And if
I'm thinking that's pretty much any sport.
Well, that's true too. But if we had social media in 2000, I'm pretty sure if you go back and you listen to old podcasts, that's all anybody. Oh, Michael Schumacher. Oh, Ferrari. I don't want to watch this anymore.
Horrible.
Ferrari wins every week. I mean, like this is not news, people. This again, it's the opposite of any given Sunday. It's any given rule set. So buckle up. This is not
any
the
given
first
regulation
time.
change. That's to draw that parallel. You're absolutely right. It's not any given Sunday. It's any given regulation set.
And on top of that, I mean, that's often what's said about football. But as Flip and I were discussing this weekend, football has created rules to make it that way. It's not like football naturally inherently was any given Sunday somebody might win. They've created a system so that could happen. And you could create that in Formula One. But I'd like you to all stay out of my sport and please don't do that. Right?
Don't do that.
Keep your hands off my Guinness. It's fine. So
keep your hands off my bloody desert.
That's right.
Yes.
I just think that there's space for that somewhere else, not right here.
Yeah, I agree. as far as dominance, well, that's happened before, and you're absolutely right. In 2000 to 2005, I mean, the level of moaning about Schumacher and Ferrari winning everything was, I mean, over the top. It was unbelievable. How many times we have people come to the website back then and say, "That's it, I'm done with F1. I'm not watching it. This domination is terrible," and it happens. And then you heard it. The other parallel that's interesting is, so if you go back and you kind of read the press, when Vettel first came to the sport and won in the Toro Rosso and then moved to Red Bull. And the British press loved him because he's a big fan of British comedy like Monty Python and British culture and those kind of things. And the British press loved him until he won 4 titles in the trot, and then they hated him. Yeah. And they painted him as the arch villain to Lewis when he was over at Ferrari. And then magically, when he got a trash bag and picked crap up in the grandstand, now they love him again, because he's not winning, I guess. So this happens in Formula One. I think there's more at play. Do I think the domination by Max and Red Bull? Of course, it has an impact, but I don't know that it's time to, rebuild the fortress at Helm's Deep and, fight off the orcs at this point. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think Lewis Hamilton brought in a lot of fans. And so, yeah, if you're Team LH, right, this is not what you wanted. This is, I don't know about you, right? But I've been watching apparently large amounts of Star Wars recently. And so again, flipping, we're talking about, Ahsoka's about to finish out. So, right. Anyway, we were talking about how it's interesting how your relationship to Star Wars depends on what your first movie was, right? And so in some ways, I'm drawing the same parallel because, like, for me, the first movie I watched was the one with the Ewoks, right? Which I can never remember any of their names.
Return of the Jedi.
Thank you. But with the Ewoks. Yeah. And so, and I kind of think of all these other series either happening before Ewoks or after Ewoks. So I think the same thing happens with Formula One is what I'm getting at here. Like, there are people now that their first Star Wars movie watched was Phantom Menace. And it's just like, what? That was the first.
That's sad.
Right, exactly. So even though many people don't like the Ewok movie either, Phantom Menace makes me even sadder, right? Like, there's some people that their first exposure was Jar Jar Binks, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah, that's terrible.
So I think in Formula One, if your first experience was coming in at, as a Team LH member, at Lewis Hamilton winning championships, and then expecting him now to be winning more championships, you are going to be disappointed.
Sure.
I'm sorry that you're now watching the Phantom Menace. I can't help that. It's going to take a while, but maybe Mercedes will come around, and that will happen as a long-term McLaren fan. But I think that you can't. I don't know. I always tell people, just like, don't ride those high. Like, this is a McLaren fan. I'm a little high right now. This is about it. I can't get to here. This just is disappointment because I know this is coming, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think if Ferrari fans have really, if they knew in the Schumacher era where we'd be now, you guys might have savored that a little bit more, right?
Yeah, you would have. Yeah. Well, remember Seb won the last championship at Red Bull, and he said, just enjoy this because you never know,
that's
if we'll
right.
ever do this again.
So I just think that this is, I mean, of course, if you are FOM, right? If you're Liberty Media, this is what you're concerned with, right? And I get that. But to me, as a fan, I'm like, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
It comes and goes. It'll be okay.
Yeah. And the folks at Liberty Media, they're pretty smart folks, and they're going to read this and have some concerns about it, but I don't know that they'd write this on a rock and consider this, oh my gosh, it's
sell everything.
Panic, sell everything.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case. Although, the report did give F1 a pat on the head for its its fan increase in total. It said, quote, between 2016 and 2022, F1 grew its conversation levels by 80%, which was only better by the Indian Premier League at 208% increase. And I'm thinking, wow, that's apparently a league I'm not following close enough if it had that much growth. And the UEFA Championships League up 112%. Behind those two, F1 was the most. And it said, remarkably, F1 managed this despite hosting the fewest events of the top 5, with 2022 conversation coming from just 22 race weekends compared to 285 NFL matches, including the Super Bowl, which year on year is one of the most talked about sporting events in the world. The only year that growth slowed was in 2018, and the biggest growth was in 2021 when they gained around 14 million new cross-channel followers. This makes them the fastest growing social channels of any major sport in that time period.
So let's hope that those fans stick, right? Like now that
That's
you're
the
actually
secret.
watching this sport and you're realizing that sometimes it's boring and sometimes it's annoying, but it's okay. Keep watching because it's also great and exciting and interesting.
Right. And that's the whole key. It does suggest that while overall fan engagement is down, F1's own channels are considerably up, and that's a positive sign.
Well, that's absolutely what you'd want.
Yeah, and to your point, so this was, and we said this 2 years ago when DTS was exploding. We said at the time, this is that moment that F1 and Greg Maffei and everybody need to look at Formula One and take a hardcore look at their value proposition, what their unique selling proposition, what their product is, and really figure out how to create stickiness with all the new fans that they got via DTS. So DTS was the perfect storm, right? It was a series that probably would have went unwatched had COVID and lockdown not happened. But as it was, everybody's stuck at home. It was well done, of course. And so that always is good. Got a lot of new fans. And the point is, can you make a certain stickiness level to Formula One to keep them? And, maybe what this report is suggesting is that first huge wave of fans are starting to wane because, it isn't like DTS on a daily basis or a week by week or race by race basis. And the other thing is that there's a lot of domination. So if they all came on board, let's say 2021, when Lewis got beat at Abu Dhabi, or people would say Lewis didn't get beat, but I'm not going to argue that, but the point is in 2021 was the end of Mercedes domination. So they hadn't really seen a lot of domination unless they went back and looked at 8 years worth of Mercedes domination, right? So the older fans that lived through that 8 years, were fully familiar with it, and good for Mercedes, and now it's Red Bull's turn. But if you weren't familiar with that, then the Red Bull domination might be off-putting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think in that context, the key to F1 now is how to retain as many of those fans. So some of those fans have become hardcore fans, right?
Yeah.
Who follow everything. They're in the technical. They really got sucked in. They love the drama, the politics in the paddock. They love it all, and they're really hooked like you and I were. You were 23 years ago. I was way back. I don't even want to admit how long ago. And so we all got sucked into that. Now, there are those fans. There's others that will watch a few races. They're more casual fans.
Yeah.
And they enjoyed DTS. They'll watch a few races. They're not into talking about tire compounds and heat cycles and windows for tire. It's just not what they're into. They're more sports fans than they are F1 anoraks, right? And so the question is, you're going to have some attrition. It's going to happen. And maybe this year it is happening. But Formula One has to really sharpen its edge in order to try to stave off losing more of those fans and convert them to hardcore fans, or at least that's my opinion.
I think the only reason to watch Formula One for some people is so you understand the memes. I guess that's the point I was trying to make about the touchdown montage, right? At the end of Red Zone. That's fine. I mean, I clearly watch, if somebody said, hey, Grace, you want to come over watch X football game? I'd be like, sure. But really, Red Zone just was on TV on Sunday and I'm like doing chores or whatever, right? I'm not really, most games, I'm not sitting there watching them, right? Unless it's my team and they're not sucking. But I mean, it's like we talked about baseball, right? Like one of the reasons why older fans, old timers are mad about baseball being shorter is because I just want to have it on all day while I do other stuff. And by shortening the game, it's not on all day, right? So I think that That's fine that Formula One is that way. And I think Formula One has an ebb and a flow both within the race itself. Like, again, I remember watching this sport back when the only way you couldn't, if you didn't watch it live, you had to tape it on a VCR tape, so you would have to like time, like, okay, I need a drink. Okay. They're going to go to the pit stops in 5 laps. All right. If I go quick, I can hit the bathroom and get a drink and be back before pit stops. Right. Like, you figured out where the timing is, and that's true of all sports. And that also happens across the seasons, and it happens across the year. And I agree. I think this is interesting. This is fun fodder. I don't know that I would, if I was suddenly Liberty Media, I would be panicked. And
right.
I also think what we all have now, what sports fans have now that we didn't have 20 years ago, is the capacity to be as informed or uninformed as you want to be.
Yeah, right.
There are plenty of F1 content on YouTube that is both, like the race or F1's content, itself proper, that's, high quality, to like people like us that are just talking about stuff, and somewhere in between. And I think you have all of that. And so if you were like, I don't understand what's the big deal about suspension or the difference between push rods or pull rods, you can now find that information. And I think that's what really will make a difference for some level of fandom, that it's true of all sports. Now you can just pick up your little computer and go, like, what does that mean? Or, oh, why did he say that? Or, I don't understand this weird quip that Martin Brundle just made. Oh, that's apparently something he made up. You can just, you have the ability to look that up, and you have the ability to reach across to other fans. So
yeah, I think also
they just need to like bring it down a notch. It's okay.
I think also one of the other assumption is that fan engagement and social media posts and stuff are an earmark of the health of the sport.
Sure not,
and I'm not arguing that it's not one key indicator, but I also have to think that there's different kinds of people, not just different kind of fans, but different kind of people. There's a lot of people that consume social media but don't engage. They don't post stuff prolifically. And there's probably quite a few F1 fans. To think that the only way you could measure the sport are the people who are outspoken, comfortable with social media,
Sure.
comfortable making memes, comfortable of being very candid, maybe very pointed or very glowing or whatever about the sport or whatever they're watching. Not everybody is a prolific engager on social media. Some people just consume content, they read it and they move on. And, they're a silent contingent within the social media world that isn't on there constantly having something to say about every damn thing. And so I think there's a large part of that's probably missing in this element too.
I think for sure. I think that's true of any human analysis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just F1.
No, you never
want
to
to be anything.
Yeah, you never want to understand a concept by looking at a sole data point, right?
Yeah.
And so everything is complicated. So I think that's a good point to make too, and that there are lots of ways that people are going to engage with this, and I lurk all the time on social media. So I was just like, well, that's true. I very rarely am like, I say anything, but I watch a sport all the time. So
yeah, I've got other, personal accounts and stuff, social media that I just, read content, read posts and stuff like that. I'm not on there posting crap. It's just not what I do. I do on, the TPF social media, but anyway, let's know what you guys think. I mean, does this comport with kind of how you see it? And especially if you're a newer fan, I'd love to know if you're a newer fan to Formula. Let's say you started watching with Drive to Survive in 2021 or onward. How are you finding it? How are you seeing it? I would love to know what you guys are thinking. I always get accused of being an old man shouting at the clouds and telling everybody to get off their lawn and gatekeeper for F1, and I'm not. I welcome the new fans, obviously, as much as anyone else does. It was when I was getting all the hate mail and angry comments directed towards me from all the new fans telling me to, get educated about racing and all this stuff that I got a little confused. But let us know what you think. If you're a newer fan, does this sort of comport? Are you kind of losing interest and not engaging and those kind of things anymore?
So I just have two things. First of all, you are an old man yelling at the clouds, but not about Formula One.
Yeah, right.
Second of all,
it's true.
I think it would be interesting too, because I think another component of this is also age, right? So I think, so I'm not native, right? Social media became a thing. I was an adult, right? So I think now the kids, as they're the 20-year-olds, the mid, 25, almost 30-year-olds are native social media users. They grew up with this technology. It's always existed. They've always used it. So I think that's the crosstabs I'd want to see, is kind of not how people of my gen, not Gen X's and olders use it. I want to see how younger generations who are now becoming adults and, citizens in this world, how they interact with both a sport like Formula One and social media versus how I do, because I don't really engage in social media because it was never like my heartbeat. You know, you and I are both of the age where if you took a picture, you had to have a human being had to develop that picture, right?
Yes.
So that like changed everything, that some human being, even if it was some dude in a photo hut in the middle of a parking lot, some other human being saw that picture. And so that changed the kind of pictures you took, which you just don't have that now. And so that changes the way kids interact with photos. I mean, I take 6,000 photos of my cats. If we were still using film, I wouldn't have that, because that would cost me money and somebody would have to develop that.
See, you and I would go to a place that looked like that. There's a picture of Photomat right there.
That's it.
A little hut in the middle of a, Kmart parking lot right there.
Right. And so I think all of those things change the way technology works, how again, I use the word kids, they're 30, how they interact with, something like social media or streaming, or, again, it used to be if the race wasn't carried on a major network, I didn't get to see it. And if it was only 2 a.m, I had to hope my VCR remembered to tape it.
Yeah, do you remember the day when you'd have to set up the length of time your VCR recorded that channel? And then I always remember when it was going to be at Spa, I thought, oh, Spa, that could be a 4-hour race. And then my default was I just set up my VCR to record that channel for 6 hours.
Yeah, right.
And then that way, if it was delayed, red flagged or whatever, hopefully I'd get the whole race.
As long as the tape lasted, just keep recording. Yeah,
just keep recording to the very end, the bitter end, if you will. Yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you think about that.
Yeah,
interesting report from Buzz Radar. Now let's get to the biggest story this week. It's interesting on the headlines that you would read. Now let me give you the positive spin on this. Lots of headlines.
There isn't one.
Well, there was plenty of headlines that said, that Andretti Global has been approved for, Formula One to join Formula One. There were a lot of those, and Andretti gets green light to join F1. Andretti, is going to join F1, et cetera, et cetera. It's not exactly how it's all gone down.
Slow your roll, people.
Yes, you got to pump the brakes here a little bit.
But just like social media, that doesn't make a good headline.
It doesn't, and you don't get anybody to click on it.
Andretti is halfway there. Isn't a very clickable headline.
Yeah. So if you look at the visits to our page, my headline for the story was Andretti sort of approved to join F1.
Yeah.
And that's more accurate.
He got the easy part.
Yeah. So that's a more accurate headline that nobody clicked on or read because they didn't give a damn, because I wasn't saying that Andretti got the green light. It's on. It's game on, right? So let's talk about it. So there was a report that came out in the press. The FIA had approved, they were going through this vetting process of several teams, several groups, I should say, that wanted to join Formula One for 2026 or 2025 onward. I can't remember if it was 25, 26, one of the two. And so anyway, the FIA has a process that they were going through. Mohammed bin Salem, adamant, or MBS, adamant, Eddie everywhere, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Adamant that he's said you got to get more teams on the grid. They went through this whole application process, or what they would call a tender, for people to apply. Then they went through this whole vetting process. It was arduous, according to MBS. And so they came out and they said, congratulations, we boiled it down, and Andretti Global, their F1 program, has been approved to join the grid. Now, they released that. Yeah, they released that to the press. Now that I find interesting in and of itself, because then Formula One had to respond in their own
Not
press
so
statement.
fast.
I was kind of like, well, if that was all working together, this is weird that the FIA would have a press release and then Formula One would have their own. Here's what Formula One's press statement said, quote, "We note the FIA's conclusions in relation to the first and second phases of their process and will now conduct our own assessment of the merits of the remaining application," end quote.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you folks, that doesn't sound like at all like an endorsement, right?
Nope.
As a matter of fact, all it's recognized, it says, "We note the FIA's conclusion in relation to the first and second phases of their process," right?
We note that Michael Andretti is a person.
Right. We note that Michael Andretti was interested in joining F1 and the FIA was interested in him.
Good to know. Thanks.
Then FIA President Mohammed bin Salyem, or MBS, said this, quote, and this is interesting too. So parse the words here, just like you did on this first quote, folks. Parse these words too. Quote, "The FIA was very clear in establishing stringent criteria for entry from the outset of the expressions of interest procedure. Our objective, after rigorous due diligence during the application phase, was to only approve prospective entries which satisfied the set criteria and illustrated that they would add value to the sport. The FIA is obliged to approve applications that comply with the expressions of interest application requirements, and we have adhered to that procedure in deciding that Andretti Formula Racing application would proceed to the next stage of the application process. In taking that decision, the FIA is acting in accordance with EU directives on motorsport participation and development. Andretti Formula Racing was the only entry which fulfills the selection criteria that was set in all material respects. I congratulate Michael Andretti and his team on a thorough submission. I also want to thank all prospective teams for their interest and participation," end quote. Wow.
You know, that quote was both boring and annoying.
Yeah.
Would you go to the Ron Dennis School of Word Count? Golly, like,
it's amazing, isn't it?
that was so many words. So many words.
That thing, if you pick that press release up, it would be dripping with COIA over litigation. That is... they are running so much screen and cloud cover for any potential litigation that, you know,
dear Mr. Andretti,
EU directives. Yeah, I mean,
please don't sue us. Yeah.
Well, it could be Andretti. If it doesn't go through, Andretti could sue him.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
There could be teams on the grid that might think they have a legal precedent here. That to me, I could be wrong, but that doesn't exactly sound like two organizations working in concert with each other. And I think the issue still remains. Does FOM and 10 teams feel Andretti will suck up some of the prize money, or will they make the pie bigger, right?
I think
this has always been the issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to tell you, that whole quote from MBS, I mean, MBS, no offense, but ever since he took that role, you know, with the whole getting in a fight with Christian at the prize giving, and I don't know, it just seems very junior league, the whole thing. And I know, and I don't mean that to be harsh, because I know there's men and women that work for the FIA that are wickedly smart and really on top of their game. But boy, it's just times like this, it just seems junior league to me.
I think sometimes I think he doesn't understand what his job actually is. You're not the dictator of Formula One.
Yeah.
You know, that's not really your job either. But I just think that it's always, and I've said this about a million other scenarios, but like we talk about the drivers, like by the time a driver comes out and says, "This sucks, I don't like this team isn't listening to me, I'm over it," he's had that conversation behind closed doors a million times.
Yeah.
So by the time we've heard about it, that is not the first time.
Right.
What? I have no idea. Gesturing. Anyway,
Did you just do the gesture again?
He gave me a thumbs up, but I don't know how I did that.
It doesn't do it with me. That's awesome.
I don't know.
Applause. See what that does.
I don't know. I don't know what I did. It just gave me a thumbs up.
So funny.
Marquez Brownlee, this was not in your video about the new iOS, so I have no idea what I've triggered here at all. But anyway, so my point, whatever it was at the beginning of this conversation, is I think that he doesn't necessarily understand his position, and also they're not on the same page. And not only are they not on the same page, but they're in public not on the same page.
Yeah, so which is even worse.
How many conversations have they had about Andretti? I mean, he showed up. He's been around now having this tenure for over a year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you had a whole off season that you could have talked about what you were going to do about Michael Andretti and the 4 other teams. I'm waiting for one of those other teams to be like, oh, hey, hi. So we were team number 3. We'd like to know why we were rejected. Right? Because, I assume that it has to follow some sort of like contractual procedure. It's not just at the whim of somebody. So you would have to know why was Andretti accepted and I wasn't, so that you could then try again and know why.
There's a lot of legal.
I want to know.
Somebody
else has got to come out.
MBS is no Max Mosley.
No, that's for sure.
And he's really no Jean Todt either. And I think the problem is, he just seemed, he in particular, maybe the FIA in aggregate, but they seemed really hell-bent to get more teams on the grid. And ever since he's taken over this role, he's kind of went in like, there's a new sheriff in town and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the teams think he's a joke. And they're not listening to him, and he's trying to establish his presence in the sport as the regulatory body, and trying to. You remember, he's coming. All right, the jewelry stops, and this stops, and it's kind of like, I don't know, dude. Is this a hill you want to die on this thing? I mean, really?
Hands and piercings. That's what you're going to go for.
So Lewis has a nose stud, and that's really, really. I don't know.
I just enjoyed how much rumor mongering there was about what other piercings he may have. That was neither boring nor annoying. So
yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, the whole thing is really askew. And I don't know. I guess though, to move off MBS and the weird kind of positioning and all that, I could see the FOM either rubber stamping this as a formality, but I could also see them burying this whole thing.
Yeah.
And if they go down that road, let me say, A, it wouldn't surprise me if they just rubber stamp it and bring Michael in. B, it wouldn't surprise me if they bury it and kill the whole thing. And C, it would not surprise me if one of the ways they use to bury it is to say that you didn't convince us of your sustainability efforts and the kind of thing I think a societal impact which you may have. It's one thing to say you don't have the cash to sustain an operation. We know how much an F1 team costs. You don't have it. You don't have the capitalization behind it. You don't have the development. You don't have the wind tunnel. All those things are metrics that you can measure. When you get into sort of sustainability and how much and societal impact, those are gray areas, even within the regulation set that mandates that the teams are supposed to have this. I doubt anyone pressed Gene Haas to the wall and said, "Oi, what's your sustainability and societal impact statements?" I think when he got in, nobody did, right?
But this is like safety, right? That's the beauty of that statement, right?
It is.
Like,
it's cost, safety, or sustainability. It's the blunt, three-sided weapon that they use.
Right. So it means, as you and I were talking on the last podcast I was on, right? Like, so whatever. You can't prove something that has no quality points, right? Like, hire Sebastian Vettel. I don't know what. Yeah, right.
Like, we'll hire Seb to pick up trash after each race. I don't know.
We'll build some bee houses at every track. I don't know what that standard is. So, but I do think it's. whatever comes of this, I do hope that Michael Andretti writes a like tell-all biography, because
yeah, that would be funny.
That would be great. Again, it's like getting the Felipe Massa lawsuit just into Discovery. I just want to know. I just want you to spill the tea, Michael Andretti. I just want to really know what you've been doing for the last year, and that you're being jerked around like this. And he's not dumb. I mean, right? He's been doing this for a long time. He's played this game for a long time.
Yes, he has.
And so I just think I have so many questions for Michael Andretti about what does he want? What is he going to gain from this? Why you would do it? Why are you letting yourself get jerked around like this? And I want to hear from those other 4 applicants. I want to know why they think they didn't get it, and what Michael Andretti's bringing to the sport that they can't bring.
Yeah, one of them was one of them was really upset because they revealed that, oh, no, we're really upset because our whole thing was we were going to have a female driver focus. And it's kind of like, I don't know. That's so that,
you want a gimmick? I got a gimmick.
If I'm MBS, I would have discounted you too, because I don't need gimmicks. I need a team that's going to deliver. To that point, and I've been on this sticking point ever since this came up. Total Wolff was the first one out saying it in the press. And he was saying, he's not against adding another team. And a lot of the teams are against adding an 11th team because they all fear that all that 11th team is going to possibly do is suck up more prize money and not make the pie bigger. So all of a sudden, they added this metric to the tender process that the team had to prove that they would add value to the sport. Now, I don't know if the add value is broken down in what ways and what the metrics of adding value is, but I guarantee you Gene Haas was never asked that. I'll guarantee you Mercedes and Total Wolff, when they bought Braun and took it over, weren't asked that. Right? And now all of a sudden, Michael Andretti has to go in and poop out bricks of gold for them to think that he's worthy to do that. And I find that kind of insulting. The other side to that is it is a difficult position for your boy and mine, Zach Brown in McLaren, because Zach is in a tough spot because he and Michael are friends. They're both Americans. Zach's worked with Michael before, I'm sure, with JMI, and they know each other. And Zach's been very vocal, saying, I think Andretti would be great for the sport. It's a historic name, a Formula One champion. Yeah, he's been very endorsing of that. So it's a tough position for Zach to be in if all the other teams don't want Andretti. Formula One and Stefano doesn't want Andretti. And why wouldn't they? Because Liberty Media is American. Right? Michael is American. Zach Brown is American. Haas is American. Why? The U.S. is a big market for F1. Liberty's American. Andretti, Zach, all of that. I don't think it would go down really well if they deny Andretti a spot on the grid for U.S. fans.
But I'd want more details. I think just saying I'm an American, I'm an Andretti is just as gimmicky as saying I'm going to have a female-focused team, right? Like there has to be more to it than just I'm an Andretti.
I agree, but you know that there is, because Michael does have a full racing operation.
I get that, but I just think that I also think there's more to it than just it's going to dilute our money. There has to be something else that has not come out yet. I can't imagine that.
I can't imagine either. Yeah,
it has to be.
No, you bring up a great point. You would think that, look, if he's down in 10th or if he's battling for 11th or 10th in the championship, is everybody going to get upset over the several $1 million you get for 10th? Or is it a case that they think Michael does have a full racing operation, aero engineering, everything?
Correct. Because if anybody can do this, it's Michael Andretti.
It might be Michael Andretti.
It's not just he's going to take away money. He's an actual competitor, and we don't want him. Yeah. We want more Zorn GPs and Gene Haas's. We don't want more Michael Andretti's that could be an Alpine or somebody like that.
Remember, Grace, when Gene hit the ground running, he did that non-listed parts deal.
Right.
And he was pretty competitive right out of the box, and there's a lot of people pissed off about that.
And and I think the fact that Michael Andretti is stuck with it, it's not like this is his only hope and dream.
Yeah.
No, if he really didn't think that he was going to get an F1, he would have stopped a long time ago, right? So I think the more that Michael Andretti pushes, that's more credence that the teams are afraid of more than just him taking away their money.
Well, and
The
I don't want to
prize money.
discount. Yeah, and I don't want to discount. Yeah, if anyone thought that he might be just fighting for 10th, they wouldn't care.
Right.
You know, that's up to Williams and Haas and everybody else to sort it out.
Right.
But I don't want to discount the fact that he's walking into this with Cadillac.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a manufacturer behind this. It's got deep pockets. Well, deeper than privateers do anyway.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think Michael is perceived as a legit possible threat.
And I think that's why they don't want him.
And that may be why they don't
and
want him.
I think you're diluting our prize money is just a red herring, because that's the whole point of them having to bring 20,000 gazillion millions with them in order to get into Formula One, is so that you're not diluting the pie. So either the 20 million gazillion dollars that Andretti's supposed to bring isn't enough money and he needs to bring in a few gazillions more, or there's something more to it than he's just diluting the prize money.
Yeah, it's like, well, you know, the added value. I guess if I was Michael, and the reason I led with the Buzz Radar story is, if I'm Michael, I would take that report and say, hey, Stefano, could you tell me what Toto Wolff is personally doing to reverse this trend?
Yeah, I'm an Andretti. I just showed up.
I mean, I'm an Andretti. My dad won the F1 title, and F1 fans love Mario. Yeah. And I'm just wondering what Toto personally has done and the team is doing to reverse this Buzz Radar trend, because you guys right now are bleeding fans. So when you talk about added value, I'll guarantee you there's going to be merch out there with the name Andretti on it. I can't see the merch out there with the name Wolff on it. Right. And so I'm wondering, if you're asking what added value I'm bringing, I think I could show you in a full world-class racing operation from soup to nuts and a world-class racing name. And if you're telling me, I would argue you yourself as Formula One aren't doing enough to bring added value. You had all these new fans and now you're losing them. Right?
You could do a man on the street and just ask people, name one race car driver, and how many of them would say Andretti, right? Like, so that's why
in America a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy other countries. You're right. I'm speaking just the United States, but if that's what your market you're trying to break into, that's the name. I just think there's more to it than just, oh, he's going to take our money. And as much as I dislike Michael Andretti, and I would love the idea of somebody else being like, oh, just kidding. Oh, it's personal. We just don't like you, Michael Andretti. I don't think that's it. And I think that if anybody could prop up a team and be successful and know 100% what he's getting into, next to like Roger Penske himself, that's a pretty good, or, Chip Ganassi or somebody, somebody that really knows how to put a team together.
Roger Penske.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, sort of a Penske or a Ganassi, that's, and Andretti's going to be able to just like know what it takes in a way that like you or I and Paul would be like, well, I think we need a this and a this, and rub two sticks together and hope it works, right? I don't know. I don't buy it. There's more here.
Yeah, there might be.
I just want some tea.
And just for the record, I like Michael. I don't know him. I've not met Michael. I met Mario.
I love Mario.
Yeah, I've met Mario a few times. And I had a great conversation with him one day over here at Gateway.
You were both yelling at the clouds together.
We were. He was eating a plum and we were talking about Le Mans. But super good guy. Anyway, so there you go. So let us know what you guys think about this. Suffice it to say that it's not a done deal yet. Okay.
No, it's not. It's not. It's going to go on.
When you read the headlines, it's not a done deal yet.
And it really won't. I would imagine it won't really break until the season's over. Like, why would you dilute
I think
your season?
Stefano. Yeah, exactly. Unless you felt like those domination was just getting out of hand, and you wanted to kind of big up some news and generate. If you can't get Taylor Swift in the suites at some of the races to gin up the news story, then maybe this would be good.
If only the Fernando Alonso rumor was true.
If only Fernando was true, right? I agree. Let's see. Finally, Aston Martin's dilemma. Aston Martin, just as a quick recap for those listening at home. So Aston Martin had 5 podium finishes in the first 6 races of this season. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah.
Since the midpoint of the season, they have just won the Dutch Grand Prix,
Right.
just one podium in the last 8 races.
That's right.
Do you see a trend? The team slid back to 4th in the championship, and now with Grace's team, McLaren, making a late season charge, they are a legit threat to move Aston Martin down to 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. Well done, Zach. So
I wonder what it could be. I wonder what it could possibly be.
Yeah, what could it be? What could it possibly be? Well, Autosport set out to find out, those enterprising men and women over at Autosport. And they asked team boss Mike Crack if it was a serious situation. And here's what he said, quote, yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, it's serious. Yeah, we broke glass in case of emergency. It's serious. He said, this is very important. It's a bit of the opposite of last year. If you have a good start and then others are overtaking you, it's much more difficult for morale than if you do it vice versa. And that is something that for us, it's very, very important to turn the trend around. Whatever that leads to, finally, we have to see. But this trend has to be turned, end quote.
Fire Lance. Yeah.
So Crack thinks that the other teams are simply outpacing them in the development war.
Well, as Ted Kravitz once put it, Mike Crack does know all. So Mike Crack does know all was what it sounded like he said. It was hilarious.
Mike Crack does know all.
Oh, so, you know.
It sure does.
Mike Crack, you know stuff.
He does. Well, look, that's perfectly possible, right?
Yeah.
That the other teams are out developing. But let me just point out that the team also took a $53 million loss last year in 2022.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're also spending heavily on their new HQ. So you got Lawrence coming in, he buys the team, goes through a transitional period with Racing Point, whatever. Then it's Aston Martin. He buys Aston Martin. He's got road cars to worry about. He's got GT racing, a lot going on over there. There's all these things that Aston Martin's trying to do, engine contracts and everything they're doing. And then he's building this all brand new HQ. He's putting a lot of money behind this, which is great. But man, that's, you're biting off a hell of a lot of that sandwich, right? In order to pull all this off. Meanwhile, the team took a $53 million loss, and $53 million, that's a lot. But all this, to me, leads to the bigger question of why the team is okay with Lance running outside of the points compared to Alonso.
His father is. I mean, I can't imagine. Really, like, do you need a bigger neon sign? I mean, you have Fernando Alonso as his teammate.
I know.
And he's terrible.
Well, let me give you some numbers.
Go to Lancey boy's your problem.
Yeah, let me give you some numbers. So far, Lance has scored points in 50% of the races so far this year. And he has a total of 47 points in the Drivers' Championship. Conversely, you have Fernando Alonso, who has scored points in 15 out of the 16 races so far, and he has a total of 174 points.
Yeah, and even, I mean, for sure there's a handicap, right? Like we talked about this in McLaren all the time, that like if Alonso could get that McLaren to 5th, a mere mortal could get that car to like 9th, right? Like there's some human analysis you could do there, right? That you could figure out Alonso's gift of skill in comparison to the rest of the drivers.
Yes.
But this disparity is craziness.
Well, the disparity here is stunning.
That is crazy.
And
I
the
can't
amount
believe they still have them.
I know, and the amount of prize money left on the table could be tens of millions of dollars that could offset the cost of the F1 season with its $135 million cost cap, or at least cover the loss of $53 million, right? Yeah, I mean, it may be contextual. For me, tens of millions of dollars is a lot of money. But in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things, maybe to Lawrence, he feels the car isn't there yet anyway. So it's not the car, it's not the driver's issue. The car, it's not there for titles yet. It's not that critical that Lance finish on Alonso's tail. Perhaps he views this as a building phase for the team.
Finish
I
it
can
all.
well, I mean, yeah, and I understand that. I mean, it took Red Bull what 6 or 7 years to finally get to their championship. It took Mercedes very similar amount of time, and maybe he just feels that it's going to take time for the car to finally get around to be a possible race-winning car. And right now, Lance is the least of their issues. Maybe that's how he's viewing it.
You put Liam Lawson in a crap of a car, and now you're going to tell me, but you should keep Lance Stroll. I don't buy it.
I know.
I have no idea why they've decided this. I can't. There has to be a better option than Lance Stroll in that second car.
I got to think they're also funding road car company and road car racing, sports car racing. I think getting enough prize money to make their F1 efforts a push, it would be critical in my mind. I'm sure it is to some folks' minds, namely maybe their accountant, but I don't know.
I don't understand. Red Bull has a plethora of drivers. You for sure could rub some sticks together and get one of those guys in your car now, today.
Yeah,
and it has to be a better option than Lance. I
don't understand when you look at it. Like I just told you the numbers.
Yeah,
that is so stark and stunning of a comparison. It makes no sense why they wouldn't have changed mid-seasons to try to get the points.
Go pull Nick DeVries out of his Harvard Business School
exactly
classes and put him in your damn car. Like
exactly.
I don't understand. I really don't.
I don't either.
I mean, what more evidence do you need that not only is Fernando Alonso an amazing talent, but there's also a mentorship there, right? And they have a good relationship, unlike the relationship that Lance had at Alpine towards the end, right? No, not Lance, Alonso.
Fernando,
had at Alpine with Ocon, right? That relationship soured. He seems to still maintain a good relationship with Lance. So, I mean,
now's the time.
If you have all his data, right? Like, I don't know what else is going to make Lance a successful driver at your team. And he has a rolling contract. Get rid of him. What are you waiting for?
I know. Just stop the insanity. All right.
I don't know. There has to be a better solution.
Let's do some Albin's Cats. Oh, yeah. Yes, little Albin's Cats. It's always fun. What do you got for us this week, Grace?
All right. So first of all, I'd like to start out for all those people who were listening to the first story and were like, oh, yeah, that's me. I'm one of those people. I'm bored with Formula One. Why do I even listen to this podcast anymore? I don't know. It's boring. It's annoying. I'm over it. I'm here to tell you, as I've told you before, because that shows you just how often this kind of boring, annoying cycle happens. Watch MotoGP. There are 3 points between Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin. 3 points. What are you people doing with your lives? If you're tired of the dominance of Red Bull, go watch MotoGP. There's no there is dominance. They're all Ducatis. But anyway, go over there. Watch that sport. I mean, I've said this to the point that people are like, Grace, this is not a MotoGP podcast. Well, it is. And you just need to get it together and stop complaining about Red Bull and go watch a different sport for 5 seconds.
There you go.
There you go. You'll get to see that. Also, I wanted to point out that we apparently did learn that Marc Marquez's Honda does race well at least one track, only when it's pouring down an exceptional amount of rain. He finished P3 on Sunday in Japan, in Motegi. But it was like pouring buckets. But it was great. It was great to see Marc Marquez on the podium. And since he's pretty sure going to leave Honda at the end of the season, it was nice, right? It's his last race with Honda. And
the Valentino kiss.
That's right. It was great. It was great. He's very good at covering it up. I think is impressive because everybody keeps saying, well, this is your last win for Honda. Oh, no, I didn't say it was my last win or my last podium with Honda. So,
right.
But yeah, that writing's on the wall. So anyway, but it was good to see that the Honda could perform in at least one track this season, Japan, in bucket tons of rain. That bike looked great. I did also want to know, based on, because of course the race was at first rain delayed and then they red flagged it completely. But I know Fabio Quartararo has come to several Formula One races because Ted always likes to point that out. But our Fabio, who never seems to wear a shirt, and George Russell, who also seems to never wear a shirt, are they friends? Do they hang out together?
They should be.
I feel like there should be some like shirtless competition between the two of them because Fabio for sure never. I don't think he owns shirts. But anyway.
That's funny.
I'd like to see that like crossover friendship. Like we often see the like where they change like bikes and like Lewis Hamilton and Valentino Rossi, like one rides the car, one rides the bike. This is what we need. We need like shirtless crossover between George
you could
and
have
Fabio,
George
right?
with no shirt and just leathers on, and
yeah,
that'd be good.
I think there's this could be workable, right? And George could dye a little blonde hair like Fabio's got, and what's to lose? Fabio would be all in on that.
I like it.
I think that's good. And I did also want to mention earlier I spoke of Liam Lawson, who, if you play fantasy F1 with us, I like that they didn't even change the little figure. They just kept Danny Ricciardo and just changed his name.
Changed the name, yeah.
So then I just referred to him as Danny Lawson because
Danny Lawson.
Like clearly they thought it was just going to be short term for one race, and then it was like drug on, and it's now just Ricciardo's face, but Liam Lawson's name under it. So Danny Lawson. But,
Danny Lawson.
I think he's been doing great. I think he's been great for the sport. And I think him and Yuki should have it's almost like Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. Like that Carlando romance that they have together. I've really enjoyed the two of them doing unboxing videos together. So I hope that they can continue to be friends. I mean, because they used to be roommates. So they know each other, and that's clear in their like unboxed videos together. And I want more of that romance, more Carlando between Danny Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda.
Man, I've sunk down to 12th in our fantasy league.
Oh.
I'm in 12th now.
I'm sure we're like last. I'm
like
sure.
200 points away from Shadow Realm, Donkey Legs, Don Racing. Good job for the podium so far. Although it is important to note that while I may be languishing in 12th, at least I'm not down in 18th.
Yeah.
Like Paul.
Okay. See, again, as the person whose team is a team who beat Paul, that's my goal. Beating Paul. It doesn't really matter. I'll never win, but if I'm better than Paul, even in a technicality, that's all that really matters. And that's then good. I think I'd be remiss if I did not bring up that you have gained a new member in your family. And I can't believe there's no debut on the podcast for us.
Oh, well, he's in there
chaos.
sleeping. Oh, it is chaos. I know. Here for the YouTube people, I'll pull up a picture. I think I've got a picture. Yes, we. So if you follow any of the social media, you'll know that I have. We have two Australian Shepherds, mini Australian Shepherds, and one is a black tri, the other is a blue merle, and they're great. For whatever reason, my wife and daughters just absolutely convinced that we needed a third. So we've moved from man-to-man coverage now to full zone defense.
That's a big leap, I'm telling you.
And we got our third, and there's a picture of our third. He's a red tri, and with really bright blue eyes, but he's a peach. He's a good boy. So that's lovely. 2 boys and a girl. So anyway.
I just want to make sure that, the folks at home, if you made it this far in the podcast, you should at least be rewarded with some cute dog photos. I know.
Yeah, you always need a cute dog photo. So, if you follow my social media on Twitter, the negative camber _, it'll every once in a while I post pictures of them. Anyway, all right. So, are you ready for some no shit headlines?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've taken us off track long enough. So.
Okay, let's do it. First one. Nico Rosberg tells billionaire F1 team owner he may have to sack his own son.
No crap, dude.
We were just talking about that.
I don't. That's like some Rosetta Stone reporting there, Nico Rosberg.
Nico is on it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I like this one too. Ex-Red Bull ace wants King Charles to knight unsung F1 hero with more titles than Hamilton.
What?
So that headline reads like a former Red Bull ace wants King Charles to give an F1 hero more titles than Lewis. But that's not what it means. It means that they want King Charles to knight this person, and that person has more titles than Lewis Hamilton does in F1.
I feel like this is that year we played trivia, and it was like, the answer is Christian Clean. I don't know.
That was fun, the trivia. I enjoyed that.
It was fun. We should definitely do that again.
Okay, over the holidays, we're doing it.
All right.
All right. We'll do F1 trivia again. All right.
Christian Clean is the answer.
Christian Clean. It was Mark Webber, or as my Australian friends, Mac Weber.
Yeah.
He says that King Charles should knight Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey has more titles than Lewis Hamilton.
Oh. Well, I mean.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
That's true.
You know, let's see. Next one. Lando Norris's ex shows him what he's missing on night out in London as model joins no bra club in tiny black dress. Who cares? Lando doesn't. Who cares? I don't understand. I don't get it.
I don't know.
Next, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. I'm a former F1 star who was the youngest ever driver when I made my debut. Now I'm known as DJ Squire.
Please be Max Verstappen. What is that?
Do you know who that is?
No.
Jaime Alguersuari.
Oh my word. When was
DJ
the last
Squire.
time Jaime Alguersuari. When was
Remember
the last time
Jaime
I thought about
Alguersuari?
him?
I know.
I do now, but man, that was not on the tip of my tongue at all.
That's like running a headline from Tio Fabi. It's like, whoa, who, what? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to include that because I know you and we loved us some Jaime Alguersuari.
Oh, for sure. But I would have never, again, Christian Clean is what I would have gone with. Who? I would have never. Oh,
DJ Squire. So maybe if you go look at YouTube, you probably find him. And then finally, in No Shit Headlines, this is it. F1 could be set to switch to new channel after 17 years on Sky Sports as company up staggering £2 billion a year deal.
So Sky Sports finally hires somebody that isn't a driver to do some conversing during the race, and now they're going to take it away from Sky Sport. They just got Bernie.
Are you talking about Bernie? Yeah.
Yeah, because it also is annoying to me that they will ask, this happened several times in Japan, they would ask Aunt Davidson a question about strategy. I don't know. Why don't you ask the person with strategy in her title?
Who does strategy?
Yeah, but it was like, well, Aunt, in this situation, what would you do? And at one point, Aunt was like, well, Bernie's talking in my ear. Yes, because that's what she does. So maybe stop pitching it to the driver and pitch it to the person who does strategy.
I know. Bernie's great.
They finally hired somebody who's not a driver to kind of round out, again, as we were talking about at the beginning, right? Like you kind of need somebody, there's multiple perspectives in this sport. So you finally hired a strategist to be one of your commentators instead of another driver. And now you're going to get rid of it. Great idea.
Yeah, that's what, people got all mad at me when I was saying, you either got former F1 drivers who are good at broadcasting like Martin, Ant.
Yeah.
I think PDR did a good job. I don't know why they canned him. Johnny Herbert did a good job. Yeah. These are former drivers who made the transition into broadcasting and did really well, right? Mm-hmm. I think Martin is great. Or you hire professional broadcasters who are really good at broadcasting. They were doing Premier League football before this. They were doing, cricket. They're real I think Laura Winter over on F1 TV. You can tell she's a professional broadcaster. She's broadcast in multiple sports, and she knows how to manage a broadcast, and she does well at that. Mm-hmm. When they brought Naomi in and Danica, they're neither. They're not former F1 drivers. They're not broadcast professionals, and they throw them the commentary.
To the wolves.
And they don't know what to say. They don't know. They're not adding anything. And Danica's only perspective is American open wheel racing and NASCAR. And no offense to Danica, but you're not, even her colloquialisms don't even work with F1, So, and it's the same from Naomi. I mean, I'm sorry, but Naomi was like, cellophane to the broadcast. Then you go out and you get Bernie. Yeah. I was like, Bernie. Oh my gosh, Bernie is awesome. She knows the strategy. She knows the tire compounds. She knows where the bodies are buried in Formula One. She's, she's on it,
Yeah.
And I agree with you. But she is somebody that adds everything she's adding to the broadcast, And
especially since that's the part that is the hardest to understand or the least transparent. To somebody watching at home, right?
Totally.
What is the strategy?
Totally.
Why would you make that decision, right? And I think that was a great addition. I did also want to say, was it Singapore where they had the kids broadcast? Yeah. So I did watch part of the kids broadcast because that's what our TiVo recorded, as opposed, because usually we watch it on streaming on ESPN, but if you are trying to watch it while ESPN's doing rebroadcasting, you can't watch it on the streaming. So we watched it because, of course, we still recorded on the TiVo. Anyway, but it recorded the kids broadcast with, I think, Alex Brundle. And I was like, these kids are great. I love these kids. And we should totally just have them at every race instead of the normal broadcast personality. And Flip was like, oh, but I miss Martin Brundle. I was like, oh, yeah, we should bring Martin Brundle in. So basically everybody but Crofty. That is what we've decided. Have no Crofty, just kids. Everybody else, it would be great. But I love those kids. They are hilarious because they just they have no filter, right? Which is what kids are great at.
Yeah, that's what they're good at. Yeah.
They're just like, what the heck is that guy doing? I don't know. But no broadcaster would say that. And I love that about these kids. So
yeah, I like it too.
I love it. I think this is great. Bring the kids back.
It's like Rachel's great at what she does. Pink's great. They're professional broadcasters. They've been doing it a long time. They're really good at it. They're good at what they do, know. And I think Rachel's, she does those fun vignettes and interviews and stuff like that. And she does a great job. And Pink does those too. Mm-hmm. And they're really, really good. But I don't know. But
I just think you need more variety of positions in your broadcast team. Not just more drivers. Yeah. A driver is only one component of the sport, just like it is in any sport.
It is, but you've got to, if you're going to, you got to have a professional broadcaster. You can't, I mean, it's like Simon is a professional broadcaster, he kind of helms the show, right? And he's a professional broadcaster and all. I don't always agree with Simon, but
just don't get rid of Ted. Whatever you do, people.
And Ted is great. He's a professional broadcaster, and that's what he does. He's quirky and people like it. So anyway, all right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think about the news, but we want to know what you think about the news. You can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion as always. Just do it with decorum and civility, no personal attacks. If you like the podcast, go over to your favorite podcast player and give us a good rating over there. We'd appreciate it. Nice. And thank you to our Patreon supporters as always. And then we will be back, Paul and I, to review the Qatar Grand Prix this weekend. Should be exciting. But until next time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.